Hello. Thank you for dropping by. My name is Ray Sauls, and tonight I'm not telling stories. I'm sharing something with you that has been on my mind for a long time. When I was a new Christian many years ago, I was told by all of the friends that I made in the church about something marvelous that was going to happen in the end times, the times that are way off. Well, over 40 years ago, it was a way off. But now we are on the precipice of the end times. They are almost upon us. And they told me about a wonderful thing that was going to happen. It was called the rapture. That just before the tribulation, Jesus was going to come a secret time in a secret visit and beam up all of the Christians. Now, that's supposed to happen in the second coming. The second coming is at the very end of the tribulation. But the rapture is at the beginning. So I wasn't sold on the idea because I hadn't read about it in the Bible, hadn't found any mention of a rapture. That's because the word rapture doesn't appear in the Bible. But then either does the word Trinity. And we know that there is God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. And they make up one God, the Trinity. So that argument didn't work. Well, I read books about the rapture, and I realized that some of the biggest names in Christendom believed in the rapture. Seminaries were teaching it. And they had a Bible called the Scofield Bible that just was full of information on the rapture. I have a reference Bible upstairs called Dake's Reference Bible. It is a superb reference Bible. But it is also a rapture Bible. Everybody believes the rapture, except Ray. And so I thought, well, maybe Ray is wrong. And I just kind of went along with the flow. And after a while, I liked the idea. After all, Noah and his family were taken out of the wrath that was to come when God flooded the earth. They survived. So why wouldn't God take his children out of the wrath? Seemed plausible. Well, a few years ago, I started a reading program where I would read a book of the Bible, a book of the New Testament every night. And for books like Acts and Romans, which are kind of big, it might take 2 or 3 nights. So I started, and I got down to, I think, the book of Ephesians. And one night I sat down to read Ephesians, and I just had this overwhelming feeling I was supposed to read something else. And it went across my mind to look at Matthew chapter 24. Well, I wrestled with that for a minute. I said, okay, yeah, I'll read Matthew 24. And I did. And when I was finished, I read it again. And when I was finished that night, I read it again, because the feeling that I needed to look at this wouldn't leave me alone. And quite frankly, I read it for maybe 3 or 4 nights. I don't know how many times every night. And my problem was not reading the words. My problem was not seeing what they were saying, because I had read them in the past and I was just glossing over it. I really wasn't seeing what they were saying. So I'm not going to waste my time talking about the end times. I don't want to take your time teaching on that tonight. It's an interesting subject, and we're almost there, but not tonight. Chapter 24, verse 9, Jesus is talking to his disciples. And he says, "They shall deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake." His namesake was Christ. He's talking here about little Christs, or Christians. That we will be delivered up and afflicted, and some will be killed. Now, I knew he was talking about the tribulation because he said so up here in verse 21. You just kind of have to figure backwards. He's talking about the tribulation. What happened to the rapture? Why are these Christians being killed, being afflicted, tortured? And he goes on to say, "And then shall many be offended," or stumble, "and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another." Something has happened to cause the Christians to turn on each other and to hate one another. What could it be? And I thought about this and I realized these Christians didn't go up in the rapture. There is no rapture. The Christians that turned on one another and hated one another, they didn't go up in the rapture. They departed from the faith. That's why they hate one another. And it says, Jesus said, "And many false prophets shall rise and shall deceive many." I'm a YouTuber, and I believe that there are prophets who are alive today who God speaks to, and I know who some of them are, and I subscribe to them and I listen to them for what's going to happen in the world. But I can tell you there are a lot more false prophets on YouTube. And they always have something new to say. It's clickbait. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. Now listen to this. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. He that endures to the end, the same shall be saved. He's talking about Christians enduring to the end of the tribulation, which is 7 years long. So what happened to the rapture? I was really upset about this because I had invested about, I don't know, 45, 48 years believing in this, or 38 years believing in this. So I just sat there and I asked the Lord, is there any other evidence that the rapture is false? And the idea went through my head. Read about the church fathers. What did they teach? I didn't even know who the church fathers were, but with a computer, it's very easy to do. You just get on DuckDuckGo and type in church fathers, and all the information is right there. I don't use Google. So after a little bit of research, looking and reading about the church fathers really boiled down to two men, Polycarp and Irenaeus. Irenaeus was a disciple of the Apostle Paul. And Paul wrote the letters to Corinth and the letters to Thessalonica, both of which had verses in there about the second coming. And then there was the Apostle and then there was the Apostle John. And he had a disciple named Polycarp. Polycarp sat at the feet of the Apostle John, who wrote the Gospel of John and 3 epistles, John 1, John 2, and John 3, and most importantly, the book of Revelation, the largest book in the Bible pertaining to the end times. I read a book by Polycarp, and there was nothing in it about the rapture. And I was puzzled. Why? And I read about the teachings of Irenaeus, and he didn't teach anything about the rapture. Why? Jesus didn't either. Because the idea of the rapture hadn't been invented yet. So who did invent the rapture? Well, I found the answer in this book by Rick Wiles. Rick Wiles has the best Christian news program in the world. Him and a guy named Doc Burkhart run the show, and they do research every day and come up with the news that you will never see on American TV. And Rick Wiles published this book, Final Day. This is not about the end times. It is about the final day of the world. It's good reading. I recommend it. But more importantly, there are several chapters in here about a man named John Nelson Darby. born in 1800, Irish. His parents bought a castle in 1815, I think. The castle was built in 1252, I think. They were occultists, and they worshipped the dead, called necromancy. And they used to have seances in their home. And some say they actually raised the spirits. And they had one in particular. They called it. Anyway, this is the household that John Darby grew up in. John Darby became an Irish Catholic priest. But he wasn't a very good one, because he didn't like the way the Bible was written, and he had some ideas of his own. And he was belligerent, and he was headstrong, and he just didn't like teaching the way he was supposed to teach. And the church kicked him out. He went to London. He found a little church in London called the Plymouth Brethren. He started attending in a very short time. He was the pastor of that church because he was so willful and so forceful. And he started teaching his doctrine that he called the rapture. He tried to push it for years and years and years. He published papers and he distributed them. People in his church would distribute them. And he was unsuccessful to a point, but he got his papers to the eyes of Charles Spurgeon, who was the most renowned preacher in England. He was a Baptist minister. His sermons are still studied to this day. They were very good sermons. He was an orator. We don't have too many of those today, but he could really speak. He did not like what he read when he read John Darby's doctrines of the rapture. And he told the people from his pulpit in London that this man must be silenced. He is teaching heresy. And that pretty much killed John Nelson Darby's teachings in England. So he decided, I'll go over the pond. I'll try it in America. And he did. He made 5 trips to America, pushing his doctrines, spreading his leaflets, and trying to get people to subscribe to what he believed. Well, one of his leaflets found its way into a jail. And there was a person in the jail who was glad to grab anything to read. He read this, and boy, the lights just went off. His name was Cyrus Schofield. He was an embezzler. He was a thief. He was married and had left his wife and 3 children destitute. He was a smooth talker. he talked a senator, I think he was a senator of Michigan. He talked a senator into appointing him to be a DA, a lawyer, a district attorney in the city's court. The lawyer, the senator got him the position. Of course, he was out of jail by this time. Got him the position, and in 6 months, he was in jail again for embezzling and stealing money. He was a real flim-flam man. His wife did give him a divorce in 1883. And in 1879, he ended up in Dallas, Texas, as a pastor in a church. He married again. He was no good. Then he got the idea, I'm going to take these teachings of Darby and I'm going to write annotations to the Bible, and I'm going to get it published. And that's exactly what he did. He got Oxford Publishing from London to give him the money and to publish the Bible and send it to America. And the colleges and the seminaries just bought all they could. They adopted the teachings of Darby about the rapture, and they invited Doctor of Divinity, Sarah Scofield. He was not a doctor of divinity. He was a fraud. He was a liar. He was a cheat. He was a swindler. He was a flim-flam man. But D.L. Moody, was it D.L. Moody? I think his name is D.L. Moody, was one of the greatest evangelists at the time, and he had a college, a Bible college, and he was also a Darbyite, and he made sure that the people in his Bible college got a good injection of Darby poison. And they read it out of the books, out of the Bibles published by Sarah Scofield, published by Oxford Press, but authored by Sarah Scofield, D.D., Doctor of Divinity. Dallas Theological Seminary also adopted his teachings and sold his books in their university, in their seminary. Most of the evangelical churches of the time subscribed to the rapture and pushed his Bibles. Since about 1880 something, I forget, there have been over 4 million Scofield Bibles published in America. They are the standard in the Baptist Church. I want to ask you something. Do you think God needed a new theology so bad that he would have an occultist and a man who was not theologically sound produce a new philosophy of religion called the rapture? Do you think God would want someone like Schofield to publish it, to get it published and to push it? Do you think God needs these two people to promote and produce the rapture? It is not theology. It is a lie. And here's the reason I'm concerned about it. I'm concerned about it because God is concerned about it. And here's why God is concerned about it. We are fast getting to the point where the tribulation will begin. I won't go into talking about what is going to trigger the tribulation. The reason I'm not going to get into it is I'm not really sure what it is. But I believe it's going to happen soon. And when it does, there will not be a rapture. And millions of Americans who believe in the rapture are going to turn their back on God because it didn't happen. They're going to think it's all a lie. God's a lie. Everything's a lie. And there are going to be a lot of Christians who won't make it up at the second coming. I hope that you will take responsibility, as the Bible tells us that we should take care of our own salvation. I want you to take care of your own salvation and decide whether you're going to believe in the rapture or not. Thank you.